Hey everyone, Robert Byrne here. Thanks so much for visiting my channel. I want to talk today about something that's very confusing that pretty much everyone has to deal with, and that is understanding car insurance coverages. Car insurance can be pretty complicated and hard to understand, and frankly, I really didn't understand it until I was pretty much dealing with it every day in my position as an attorney. So I want to give some information to you that will hopefully help you based on things I've learned in my law practice. Stay tuned. So as always, right to kick things off, I have to give an important disclaimer, and that is, this is information, it's not legal advice. That's especially important with a topic like insurance, because just about every state has different laws regarding what insurance is required and what you need to have. So what I'm trying to accomplish with this video is to give you the information and hopefully some tools that you can use to be able to discuss insurance intelligently with an insurance agent. Having been in that position where you're talking to an insurance salesman, I know what it feels like to have sales resistance where someone's trying to sell you something. You don't know if you need it. You don't know exactly what they're talking about. And you're finding yourself in this position where you'd rather say, no, I'll just pass on that coverage. So with this, I'm hoping to provide some basic information about the most common insurance coverages so that you'll know what you're talking about when you do have that conversation. And in doing so, I want to avoid a situation that I see quite often, and that is a situation of regret. I deal with people all the time coming to me after a crash, and they learn that they don't have the coverages either that they thought they had or that they actually need now after this crash. So I want to avoid that situation, and I think that education is key. So hopefully by knowing these things, you can avoid mistakes that I've seen others make. So having said all that, let's talk about car insurance coverages. So to begin with, you want to think of car insurance coverages as a menu of sort. And so you go to an insurance company and they can offer different products under your car insurance policy. Car insurance can do two things. The first thing it can do is it can protect you from losses that are caused by a crash. So it protects your assets, it keeps you from having to pay out of pocket. But there's also a second type of insurance coverages, if you will, that will actually give you benefits of some sort, whether it's income, whether it's reimbursements, whether it's rentals, or something along those lines, and you'll actually get something in the event you suffer a loss. The first type of insurance coverage that I want to discuss is called liability coverage. Liability coverage is something that will protect you in the event you hurt someone in a crash or you damage their property. So it provides both protection from bodily injury and also from property damage. Just about every state out there is going to require every driver to have liability coverage. And the minimum amounts can be very small, whether you're talking about $15,000 in some states, $25,000 in other states. But it can be very, very small. And that's what I was talking about before when I said you want to know what coverages you have and whether your needs have changed over time. Liability coverage is the most basic type of insurance coverage there is. And if you have an insurance policy, you're going to have liability coverage. But just check to make sure. The second type of common insurance coverage is called uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage. So UM or UIM coverages, they're called, will basically protect you if you're hit either by an uninsured driver or someone who has minimal insurance coverage that is not enough to pay you for all of your losses. This situation can arise, say, if you're hit by in a hit and run accident, or it could happen if you're in a serious crash and the other driver has minimal insurance coverage. I've found, unfortunately, that most people have no idea how this coverage works. But I can say that just about everyone has enormous disappointment when they find out that they're in a situation where they actually have to rely upon UM or a UIM coverage and they don't have enough to cover their loss. So I can't emphasize enough that UM and UIM are both vital types of insurance coverages. Some states will require that you have it, but not all states do require that. So check out your policy to see what you have. A third type of insurance coverage that I want to discuss is called collision coverage. So collision coverage arises if you are in a crash and your vehicle's damaged as a result. So we know that liability will cover you and protect you from claims from a third party that are against you. Collision coverage is different because it will actually pay you for those damages to your car. So even though collision coverage is optional, you'll oftentimes see if you have a car loan, your lender's going to require that you do have that coverage because of course they want to protect their asset. A fourth type of insurance coverage is called comprehensive insurance coverage. So think of comprehensive insurance coverage as coverage for damage that occurs to your vehicle from non-driving events. And so that could be your car is out in the driveway and a hailstorm comes along and the hailstones just blast it and cause all sorts of damage to it. Or you may have coverage for theft or vandalism. And if your car is broken into and damage occurs, that could be something that would also be covered. There could be some wild situations where I had a friend whose car got broken into by a bear because they left some food inside of it. Could have a situation perhaps where your car is damaged in a flood. Not every situation is covered, and so you want to take a look at your policy and you want to make sure that it offers coverages for all of these different types of events and try to figure out which events it excludes. One thing to think of, a lot of times insurance companies act like casinos. They'll cover it if you pay for it, and so it's just something you want to make sure you have covered at the outset before you actually need it. A fifth type of insurance is called medical payments coverage, or it might go by a different name such as medical benefits coverage. MedPay is coverage that's available to you, to passengers in your vehicle, and even relatives of your household who are involved in a crash. And what it is essentially is it'll cover their at least a portion of their medical expenses up to the amount of the coverage. So this can be incredibly important coverage to have if you have a car insurance policy, but you don't have health insurance. MedPay coverage can be very inexpensive to add. And if you are in a crash where you need medical treatment, MedPay can be a lifesaver as it can give you the treatment that you need without you having to worry about not having health insurance. Some states have a related, similar type of coverage called personal injury protection, or PIP coverage. So PIP is like medical benefits payments or medical benefits coverage, except it's broader and it could cover things like lost income due to a crash and the injuries that result. It can cover expenses such as daycare expenses or other costs like that that arise as a result of a crash. These are the most basic types of coverage that are available under a car insurance policy. But there are a couple of additional types of optional coverage that clients have either wished that they've had or have been extremely grateful that they've had in the event of a crash. So the first one that I want to talk about is rental reimbursement. If you're in a situation where you're involved in a crash and your car is inoperable, you may not have transportation while your car is being fixed. One option is to rent a car, of course, and you have rental reimbursement protection, which is going to actually pay for a rental vehicle for a certain amount of time until you get your car back. And that's something that can certainly be a big deal when you're dealing with all sorts of other losses and expenses that occur when you have a crash. The second type of optional miscellaneous insurance that I'd like to discuss is called gap coverage. If you're in a crash and you have collision coverage, your car insurance company is going to pay you for the value of the car immediately before the crash occurred. So they're not going to pay you based on what you paid for the vehicle, nor are they going to pay you based on what you think the car is worth to you. They're going to do a purely economic analysis, and they're going to say, based on the condition of the cars, the number of the miles, and everything else immediately before the crash, here's what it's worth. Well, if you have a loan for $30,000, but the car's only worth $20,000 and it's totaled in a crash, you still need to make those payments on the additional $10,000 after your insurance company pays $20,000. So you could be in a situation where you're paying off your old car while having payments for a new car, and you have 2 car payments even though you only have 1 vehicle. So there's a way to deal with this, and it's called gap insurance. So gap insurance will pay the difference between what your car is worth and what your insurance company pays for it and how much you owe your lender. So in the situation where you owe $30,000 and you're only paid $20,000, gap insurance is going to pick up that $10,000 difference, and it's going to pay off the lender so that you're in a situation where you have a clean slate and then you can get a new car. As you see, that's a situation where collision coverage, which we discussed earlier, may not be sufficient for you, so you can get gap coverage to make up that difference. So this is a lot of information, and a lot of it's pretty technical. I hope that it's helpful, and I hope that it will help you go into that meeting with an insurance agent on better footing so that you know exactly what you're dealing with and that you can tell if you're being sold something that doesn't seem quite right or if it's actually something that you do need. If this was helpful, I hope you'll consider liking and subscribing, and please let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Thanks.